Welcome to the Future of Tourism podcast. I'm David Peacock.
Stop owning your own content.
Young leaders are stepping up.
Bring everyone to the table
and imagine their world anew.
Welcome back to the Future of Tourism, where we talk with the thinkers and doers that are shaping the next era of our industry. This episode is part of a three-part series recorded in 2025 around the SimpleView Executive Insights Symposium in San Francisco. More than 15 years ago, smart tourism emerged as an aspirational evolution of the smart city, a model where technology, data, and digital infrastructure would support not just better travel, but more sustainable, accessible, and creative destination ecosystems. We're joined by Dr. Phil Xiang, professor and head of the Howard Fiertig Department of Hospitality and Tourism Management at Virginia Tech, and one of the world's leading researchers on smart tourism and digital transformation. Good morning, Phil. How are you? Where are you? What's it like?
Good morning, David. I'm in Blacksburg, Virginia, which is southwest part of Virginia, state of Virginia. I'm a professor at Virginia Tech in the Howard Fiertig Department of Hospitality and Tourism Management under the Pamplin College of Business. So as you know, and the audience probably is aware of as well, Virginia Tech is one of the state universities in the state of Virginia, and is well known for engineering, for computer science, for business, for other disciplines. So this is summer already, and I'm really having a good time enjoying the cool weather, in the early summer of Southwest Virginia.
It is lovely. One of my favorite biking destinations for sure. Listen, thanks for April in San Francisco. It was absolutely catalytic having you in the room. And I know this surprises you sometimes when I say it, but on the destination organization, destination management side, we are just getting our heads around smart cities and smart tourism. So maybe as a kickoff, just give me a short précis of what you talked about in San Fran, and then we'll dive into some of the questions that came out of that.
So David, at the symposium, actually, I started with sort of the brief, going back 15 years ago when we first published the article on smart tourism. We say we're really creating the vision, right? The aspirational state for tourist destinations as a part of the kind of the grandeur, if you want, the picture of smart cities. Right, we argue that technology is the foundation for us to get there. Aspirational state in terms of, as you mentioned, very very well articulated. Right, it's not just travel, but also the sustainability, accessibility, creativity of the local economy and local communities. So we see that. Okay, this is like 15 years later. Technology has evolved so much. Infrastructure actually has changed quite a bit. It's the question is, are we there yet? Right? It's a good question, but also I feel smart tourism per se is not the static state, right?
Mm-hmm.
I feel in many ways we are there, but also we're not there yet quite.
Okay, so
right?
I've been dying to ask you this question because I dropped you in that room, and when I first met you and I read the paper you wrote more than 15 years ago with your peers, it blew my mind. Smart tourism's here, smart cities are here, smart tourism's just around the corner. And I remember asking the question, are we there yet? And it was kind of a facetious question, but I dropped you in that room knowing that you would be speaking to CEOs and executives from destinations who are just beginning to get their heads around not just the idea of smart tourism, but even the idea of smart cities. I mean, we had Bellevue, Washington there, who's working with Amazon and people like that on electric car taxis for the entire city. I mean, that represents one end of the continuum. The other end is people who aren't even using AI in their destinations. What was it like in that room when you talked to those leaders? What did you, I got to ask you what it was like. I've been dying to ask you that question.
Yeah, I think it's, I think the response was a lot of curiosity, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because there's not that many opportunities for the academics to engage with this kind of conversation. I feel there's a great value for doing that. I did a presentation based on some data we recently collected in terms of looking at academic literature, right? In the last 15 years, there's a lot of development. There's this still very strong interest among the academics looking at smart tourism as the tool for development for cities, for destinations around the world. But the distribution of this literature is uneven. As I mentioned during the meeting, I said, well, if you look at Asia, particularly Korea, China, if you look at South America, in countries like Brazil, and in Europe, in countries like Spain and Italy, right? This seems to be there's a much stronger interest in understanding and also looking at smart tourism as a tool in the last 15 years. Go ahead, David.
So Jay, interesting. You live in an academic world, and in the tourism sense, you are at the leading edge of what we're studying, and this often happens, and it's not an impeachment of any industry at all. Academia leads in theory, and practice follows more slowly. It's funny though, in our own fields, we just assume everybody knows what we're talking about, and then we look over at something like data combinatorics and optimization and say, well, people don't understand that, but they understand smart tourism, but they don't quite yet, do they?
Yeah, I think requires the paradigm shift, if you want, right? The change of mind, the change of way we seeing ourselves, right? If I'm the say manager of the destination, working for a DMO, right? What am I doing? This is the question we need to ask ourselves. Are we just a marketing organization, right? For the title of DMOs, or shall we play a larger role in connecting, right, different pieces of the destination?
Well, that's the part in San Francisco that I did love, because the people who were there are all leaders who are taking, DMO beyond the traditional marketing role. They're all deeply involved in advocacy and placemaking. So this to them was apparently and immediately a tool that they're not using, that they can use. I'm interested though, because here's these literally chief executives who are coming to this concept fairly early on in their approach to it. And then you've got your students who are living and immersed in this. And these are people in their 20s and stuff. To them, is smart tourism just a given? Like, this is what we're working on, and we're going to end up working on this for our lives, and we're going to implement it. Like, it's you live in an environment where the people are constantly aware of this. What's it like with those students?
Yeah, it's a interesting point. Looking at education, right? How are we going to teach our future, executives, managers, right? The workforce. We as academics, we look at, not just within this so-called America, right? The U.S. kind of the tourism industry, but also look at the issues, problems globally, right? In many ways, we feel we are kind of the behind in terms of, developing smart solutions to problems that are really significant in our field, in tourism and beyond. Right, we are not doing enough in terms of, for example, technological integration. All our technologies are kind of fragmented, right? We're not put together to create you understand what I mean in terms of when it comes to travel, right?
Yes.
We have to, for example, it comes to smartphone apps. You have to download probably hundreds of them on your cell phone, but there's a lack of integration. And it begs the question, why are we not doing that?
Well, and that's interesting, because when you think about that, you can see a future where there's a unity to your phone, and there's not 100 apps, and that you start having, as Negroponte talked about, a personal digital assistants, and a lot of these interfaces will go away and become almost invisible as they work for us. Smart tourism should work in the same way, right? Invisibly enriching our time and experience without being a burden to us to use it.
Yeah, absolutely. If we like maybe 10, 15 years ago, we didn't anticipate, such integration would be a huge issue. Now we realize, right, with all these, developments, it becomes overwhelming, right?
Mhm,
Many
mhm.
of our colleagues in the industry actually feel the same, right? How we can do, most of the time we're doing catching up, right? We're
Well,
trying to understand what technology means and how we can actually better use technology in taking care of business. Uh,
how much is the underlying emergent data structure that we have in the world, sort of impeding that change? We've always treated, back when I was pre-university days, people say, well, data is value, data, information is power, and it's not. It's data. We built systems, for different organizations and entities. So most of our data today is relatively siloed, and
mm,
the tourism data that you want, the travel data from the airport, the transportation data into the city, the hotel data, the events data, they live in different silos. How much does that affect our ability to you know coalesce that data into something meaningful?
this is a huge problem for tourism, right? We have known this problem for decades,
Hmm.
right? This is
Hmm.
the unique kind of the aspect of the tourism. It's fragmentation. It's, as using your term, data are in silos. But now I think we are better equipped in terms of the understanding the interconnectivity between these data points, right?
Great.
From hotel, from visitors, from say on-site real-time data,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
We have access to different types of data that allow us to gain a better picture of what is going on in the world in the tourism space. I
Do you
think
do you
we're
see a shift in people's attitude towards data? I believe for the last decade we've been hoarding data. We were so convinced of its importance and value that people just kept data, and now they're starting to understand that for data to work, it needs other data.
Yes, absolutely. Other data in terms of triangulation, right? In terms of understanding the value, the validity of the data, and the end of the day, it's really about what it means, right? We have a bunch of data, but how we can translate or convert data into meaningful insights.
Meaningful
That's the
insights,
big challenge.
which lead to human experiences, even one other
Ab-
level of complexity.
Absolutely. And then the end of the day is how we can improve people's, conditions, right? Travel or otherwise.
Travel or resident, even,
Yeah.
yes. Okay,
Yes.
so you've been doing this for quite a while. Can you think of a region, city, or project that you really look to and say this is really leading? I mean, your publisher, you are the editor of an international
Mhm.
journal on smart tourism. You must have examples of where you see this working well, or one examples that you like to hold up for other people of smart tourism at work. And what can we learn from that?
But David, I think there are many examples,
Go
right?
on.
And the so-called so if you want the benchmarks in our field are everywhere. If you look at European cities, destinations, they have their own flavor, right? Their priority is probably to absorb the impact of tourism, in order to best keep their social, cultural, historical heritage, right? That's one of the priorities for the European cities. But if you look at China, which is interesting, very interesting case, right? While they have a lot of historical cultural heritages, but also they're very advanced in the technological side, right? They're experimenting different kinds of things in terms of integration, infrastructure development. I would say they're probably more advanced than anyone else in the world in terms of technological integration. They're also advanced. If you look at the smartphone
Hmm.
as
Hmm.
even as the cashless society, right?
Hmm.
They're
Hmm.
getting there, selfless driving, EV, right? Electric vehicles. They're pretty well advanced than other countries. So talking about smartness, I think it plays out in different ways, with a different kind of flavor, if you want.
So when we focus on data and digital
Mm,
tools, and I love the China example because they are very advanced in so many
mm,
digital tools. Um, Talk to me though about the emotional, cultural communal side of travel, because that's still apparent in the China examples. They're not simply cranking out tourism, for tourism's sake. They are trying to preserve a culture there, which is at the
Absolutely.
core of smart tourism. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, if you look at the China case, right? There's a lot of emphasis on the cultural heritages
Hmm.
uh, in the urban areas and in remote areas. The government plays a big part in this. Academics also pay a lot of attention to how we can preserve and also translate, right, cultural heritages into tourism resources.
Hmm. Hmm.
So this is the kind of the two prong approach to tourism development is going very very. It's a big deal in countries like China.
Well, it's a big deal everywhere. And let's talk about the U.S. for a second. Then you teach in the U.S. You have students from all over the world. Is there a U.S. example that you're really excited about, where you work on smart tourism with a given destination or a city or someone?
Yeah, that's a that's a very interesting question. David, I'm not necessarily looking at big cities like New York, LA,
Sure,
San
sure.
Francisco. Of course, these cities are much more advanced, right, in terms of technology, infrastructure. But recently, I had a trip to Salt Lake City.
Oh, very
I
good.
was quite impressed in terms of how the local communities see their role in tourism as the future hosting, destination for 2034, if I remember correctly, Winter Olympics.
Okay.
I
But
think,
how did you see that? How did you see the attitude there?
yeah, communities are quite excited, right? And quite exciting in terms of, hey, we're proud of being the host, but also we have the good stuff,
All right.
right? We are ready to accommodate. We're ready to welcome our, visitors and guests from all
Okay.
over the world.
So if Salt Lake's talking to you about hosting the Olympics, and they're
Yeah.
talking to Phil Sham
Yeah.
about smart cities, what can we look forward to in those kind of future Olympics? They're obviously talking about smarter systems around big events like that.
Yes, I think they have all kinds of, I don't know if you have ever been to Salt Lake City. In
I
terms of
have.
infrastructure,
I have.
they're quite good, very, very strong, right? I believe they have a vibrant, business kind of the communities there, restaurants, hotels, lots of development, coffee shops. Now it seems that people are gearing up to deal more kind of the, if you want, boutique, very quaint
Hmm. Hmm.
coffee shops, restaurants, right? Technology comes into that.
So
Uh,
when you're there, are you meeting with the city and the tourism department, and like, how does that work?
I actually met some of our academic
Hmm.
partners,
Hmm.
hotel sector,
Hmm.
some of the folks from the hotel sector, and one of the actually the hotel folks is on our board. So I
Okay.
had the chance to speak with him, and he was very very excited. He believes that this is the big deal when it comes to using tourism as a way to develop the city. We call it smart city, right? But eventually, it's about the living conditions of the local communities.
Well, and that's a really encouraging aspect
Mhm.
of the whole smart tourism thing. It's not smart tourism, hey, how do we sell more? It's smart tourism, how is it better? And
Yeah,
I think that's one of the most important things. This week at City Nation Place in Ottawa, the discussion, 7 years ago, I was asking people, how are you doing advocacy? 7 years later, they're all doing advocacy really well in their own cities. And I see this evolution following that path. It'll be different in every place, as you say. Who are the players? Who's driving it? Is it the DMO in one case, or maybe a group of investors in
yeah,
another case?
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, tourism. We all understand that does not exist in the vacuum, right?
yeah, and it's utterly idiosyncratic and succinct to the place it's in.
Absolutely, it's
Yeah,
connected to so many different fabrics of the society and the
yeah,
economy.
yeah. So 15 years later, you're the head of the school over at Pamplin in tourism. What excites you right now? I mean, I know you were excited 15 years ago when you were sort of wet behind the ears on this. Now, 15 years later, what piece of it's really got you excited?
There are many things, David, I feel better. I think we have come a long way in terms of understanding what tourism really means, right? And of course, we use the notion of smart tourism to capture the innovativeness, the sustainability aspect of tourism, which is wonderful. I think we're feeling a little bit more comfortable with that.
Well, that's interesting. Okay, you talk about sustainability. Now, that would have wove itself into smart tourism only in the last 5 years, right?
Yeah, it's something recent. We kind of talk about it, but not in the real sense. But now we see, all of a sudden, yeah, they're connected, right?
Well, and let's be really clear. Sustainability has a huge data component to it, right? A
Absolutely.
huge smart data component to it. I mean, all these indexes and stuff are there to help us be better, but eventually that data has to be put to work and to actually perform the task of making things more sustainable and better.
Absolutely. It's really about how we measure things, right?
And how we share that.
How we share, how we make sure people understand them, right? And share the kind of the commons, share the common vision of, okay, this is what we're trying to do.
Okay,
I feel a little bit more comfortable with that. But what really excites me is of course I'm interested in the technology, right?
Yes.
AI, that kind of stuff. Now it's a new animal, if you want, right? For us to, I'm from time to time and so scared. I don't know what it really means because AI is now has blended into so many things we do on a daily basis. Right?
Okay, we're talking about smart tourism, smart cities, but I want to touch on that because you were there. Up after you as a key presenter was Jeanette Rausch talking about AI governance. The shocking thing about her talking about AI governance was we weren't talking about it. Here we are, all these organizations, we all have lots of AI in place that, it's emergent in terms of how it's got there, but there's really very little focus on AI governance. That's the part that got me excited, was recognizing there's a gap. And I think every CEO in that room went, oh yeah, that's my job, AI governance.
Yeah. Yeah, the concept, if you think about it, is not new, right? We've been talking about governance in terms of data, in terms of how we, manage privacy, right, for a long time, copyright, privacy for a long time. So AI, but now the impact of AI is probably way stronger than, just looking at data, right? Because it's everywhere. It has impact on every aspect of our work, of our lives. So that's a very different animal.
Yeah, indeed. All right, I promised this would be a short interview and I wouldn't keep you all day. So I'm going to just one last question. If you could give destination organizations one guiding principle as they think about investing in data, digital strategy, smart tourism over the next 5 years, what would you say?
I think, as an educator, it's always about learning. I think all of us have to, keep learning. I mean, technology, moves fast, right? Way fast than what we we're always doing the catch up. So, AI obviously is one of the, so-called the hot subjects we have to understand and comprehend and appreciate. Again, data is part of that. Analytics tools are part of that. AI now is transforming those things in a very fundamental way. So I would suggest we pay a lot of attention to AI.
Okay, I want to say this. In the learning space, very big shout out and thank you to Virginia Tech and Pamplin and FIRTAG. How do I say that properly? FIRTAG School of Hospitality and Tourism for sending you to San Fran. First of all, thank you very much. And if we are going to keep learning on this, then I'm hoping you're going to come back and talk to us more about this.
I love to do that, David. Okay. I really appreciate the opportunity.
This has been great. We will continue this conversation. Thanks again for being at the symposium, and I am looking forward to the next time we get to sit down with a group of our peers and expand on this.